So it was a beautiful spring day up on Horsetooth Reservoir. I was sitting there, just kind of looking out at the scenery when a young boy came up to me and said, Sir, I have a really strange story to tell you, but nobody will believe me if I tell the story." And I said, "So why don't they believe you?" He said, I don't know, because he said, "My mom doesn't believe me. My dad doesn't believe me. Even my grandma doesn't believe me, and she believes almost everything I say. But if I tell you the story, would you believe me?" Well, what was I going to say? I said, "Well, let me hear the story. Tell me about it." He said, "Well, this is the way it works. You see, every summer, the whole family, we go to the shore out in New Jersey. My grandma's there, and she's got this really neat house, and it's only about 30 or 40 feet from the water. And so we go there in the summertime, and the whole family goes out and they dig for clams. Now, I gotta tell you, I hate clams. I mean, the whole family, they go out and they dig for these little neck clams or these bigger clams, and we have them for dinner, and I can't stand them. So, typically I just have mac and cheese. Well, so we were out there, the beginning of summer, and Dad and Mom and my little brother Derek. Well, I won't go into that for now, but the four of us were out, and we get in the water, and we kind of walk in till the water's up around our knees. And the way that you look for clams is you kind of move your feet around in the sand underneath the water, and you feel for the clam. And as soon as you feel something that feels like a clam, you reach down, you grab it, and you put it in a bucket. Now, Derek, my little brother, he doesn't ever find clams. He just finds rocks, and he says, "Hey, come on over and I've got a clam." I said, No, you don't have a clam. It's a rock. Well, this goes on all the time, except for one day, Derek screamed out, "Man," and he said, "There is a really big clam down here." And I said, "Derek, it's a rock." No, it's a clam," he said. "It's a rock, Derek." Well, my mother said to me, "Go help Derek dig out his clam." Well, what are you going to do? So I went over and I put my foot down and I kind of worked in the sand a little bit. And there was this I said, "Derek, it's too big for a clam. It's a rock." No, it's a clam." Well, I decided to reach down, so I did. And I reached down and came back up. And it was a clam. It was a huge clam. This clam was as big as a catcher's mitt, and it had, where the clam opens up, there were two kind of blue spots that looked just like eyes. And I said to Derek, this is the king of clams. This is too big a clam to eat. We got to throw it back in." And I started to, and he said, "Mom, he's throwing away my clam." And my mother said to me, "Put the clam in the bucket." Well, I did, but I didn't think this was a good idea. So I put it in the bucket. And then, we left a little while later, and we put the bucket with the big clam on the steps in front of the kitchen. And then we went inside, and then we had dinner, and we had clams for dinner, and I had mac and cheese because I don't like clams. Well, and so we got off of the kitchen table, and we went outside just before dark, and the clam was out of the bucket. The clam was on the first step going out to the ocean. And I said, look, the clam is out of the bucket. How did he do that?" And Derek said, "Mom, he's trying to fool me by moving my clam out of the bucket." Well, my mother said, "Would you quit doing this to your son, to my son and your little brother, Derek. Get the clam, put it back in the bucket. And then Derek said, yeah, not only that, this is going to be my pet clam. I said, that's the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Nobody has a pet clam. Well, I have a pet clam, Derek said. And my mother said, fill the bucket with water and take the clam into your bedroom tonight. Well, I did. I mean, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but we put the bucket with the clam between our beds, and then we went to sleep. And in the middle of the night, things really started to get strange, because I heard this shushy sound, and it woke me up, and I looked around. And then I looked up to the window looking outside, and there was the clam. The clam was sitting right on the windowsill, and it was opening up and closing and opening up and closing. And I shook Derek and said, Derek, look at this. The clam has gotten out of the bucket, and he's up there trying to get out. Mom, he's trying to trick me again. Well, my mother came into the bedroom, looked at me and said, put the clam back in the bucket. Well, what was I going to do? I put the clam back in the bucket, but this was really, really strange, because I said, Mom, look at the screen of the window. There's a hole in it. The clam had been trying to eat its way out of the room through the window. My mother said, I think that there was always a hole in that screen. No, there wasn't. There wasn't either. But I didn't want to argue. Well, the next morning we got up. The clam was still in the bucket between the beds. And we went in, and Grandma said, that sounds like the cutest thing. Derek has got a pet clam. And Derek said, yeah, I'm going to keep him forever. He's really a cool clam, even though he's really, really big. He's as big as a catcher's mitt, Well, we all went out, and we went to the beach that morning. And we left the clam inside in the bucket of water. And about noon, we came back. And I was hungry. I wanted to have something for lunch. And so Derek was behind me, and we walked up the path. We got halfway to the house. And there was the clam. The big old clam, as big as a catcher's mitt, was right on the path away from the house. And I said, Derek, look at that. The clam is out again. Mom, he's trying to trick me again. Well, my mom came back again, and we put the clam back in the bucket and took it into the house. And I knew that there was really something strange going on by this time. But there was nothing I could do. And so we went to bed that night. And in the middle of the night, I heard this huge shushing sound, and I thought it was the ocean. I thought maybe it was a high tide and the waves were coming in. And so I got up very, very close to the bed, and I sat up and I looked over, and there was that clam again. And the clam was not only up on the windowsill, but the clam's mouth was opening and closing. And the clam, I swear, the clam was saying, let me go, let me go. Well, I jumped up and I went over to the window. And what did I see? There were clams all over the yard. There were clams climbing up the side of our house. There were clams in the trees right next to the house. And they were all saying together, it's our king of the clams. Let our clammy king alone. Let him go. Well, I was scared to death because the little clams were crawling up the side of the house. And so I grabbed that clam and I held the clam's lid closed, his mouth, with those two little spots that looked like blue eyes. And I ran out the door, down the stairs, through the kitchen, out onto the path. And I ran all the way to the ocean, and I took that clam as big as a catcher's mitt, and I threw that clam into the ocean. And all of those other little clams, skitter, scatter, came running and skittering all past me and nibbling at my toes as they got into the water. And it got very quiet. And I went back to my room, and I went to sleep. And the next morning, when we woke up, Derek looked into the bucket, and the clam was gone. Mom, where's my pet clam? And my mother came into the bedroom and she looked at me with daggers in her eyes and she said, "What did you do now?" And I said, "That was the king of the clams." And all the other clams in the ocean came up to the house and they crawled all over the side of the house. They were going to come inside, Mom. And so I grabbed that clam and I held him really tight and I ran out the door to the ocean and I threw him into the water because he's the king of the clams. We shouldn't have him. He didn't want to be here. Well, my mother was so upset. She said, "Listen here, you're going to be punished for this. You cannot go clamming with us today at all. And tonight you have to sit at the table with the rest of us and not say a word. And you're not going to get any clams to eat." Well, that was not bad news at all. As a result of that, the next day, I was certainly sure that I was going to be eating mac and cheese forever, and that was okay. So now, here's the end of the story, sir. That's what he said to me. He said, "Sir, if you ever go clamming on the Jersey Shore and you find in the water a really big clam, leave it alone. It's the king of the clams."